Welcome back to the True Geordie podcast. Today's guest is Richard Grannon. I did say that right, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
You got a background in psychology.
Yes, sir.
And pivoted specifically in narcissism and narcissists. And I discovered you on Instagram and I was like hooked because so many things you say resonate with like people I've met in the past.
Okay.
Hopefully not me, but you can tell us a day if I'm a narcissist. But I guess a good place to start is kind of like, what is a narcissist specifically? Because we've all got like traits of narcissism. And hell, I work on camera, so obviously there's some of that in me. But how would you define a narcissist?
Well, there is such a thing as healthy narcissism. And you are supposed to have narcissistic traits. Like if all your narcissistic traits were taken away from you, you would struggle to function in the world. So there's narcissism as they would talk about it clinically in a psychiatric context, and then there's narcissism on the internet, which basically means anybody who's upset you, they're a narcissist. I'm going to run a poll actually on Instagram and on YouTube to see how many people who claim they understand narcissism know what the 9 traits from the DSM are, because I imagine most people don't. So narcissism is a response to a traumatic environment in childhood. And it means that you completely give up on real reality because it's too overwhelming, it's too painful. So the child chooses to live in delusion. So is one of the things we never talk about in narcissism. For a narcissist to be a narcissist, they need to have had a psychotic break with reality, and they now need to live in an ongoing, continuous break with reality. People who've dealt with narcissistic personality types will recognize this, because when you argue with them, they keep insisting on fantasy. So you're like, no, I know the dates, I know the times, I know what I said, I know what happened. And you insist on that, and they insist on changing it back into their fantasy. And we'll be on the outside of this going, well, you're just fucking lying. I can't stop you from lying all the time. And yes, they are deliberately lying and they are deliberately gaslighting the target, but they also live in a lie. Their life is a lie. So the way to think of this is, imagine you have a human being. They were a small child once, an authentic, real, vulnerable small child. Things happened that they couldn't tolerate, so they built a shell around themselves. And inside of that shell, they split from painful reality. And when they look through the shell, they never see reality as it is. It's always blurred. This shell is a filter. And they see on the inside of the shell a mirror that they've created, but not a clear mirror, like a funhouse circus sort of a mirror, that shows them what they choose to see in order to survive. So when you're arguing with a narcissist and they're clinging on stubbornly, so they have to be stubborn for it to be MPD, it's a rigid personality disorder. It's because they're like holding on to a life raft. They're at sea, they're in crisis perpetually. They live their lives in crisis. That's why they go from one drama to the next, that's all they know. And their narcissistic delusion is the life raft they cling on to. So people will come to me and say, can't you give them therapy? Can't you help them? I'm like, how? How am I going to convince a child to let go of a survival strategy that they've been using since they were 3 or 4 years old?
Wow.
It's mad, isn't it?
I've known multiple people have trauma as children.
Yeah.
And a lot of them still live in the real world. A lot of them accept that trauma. A lot of them, eventually try and heal from it and stare it, in the face. I guess I wondered why these personality types pick this fake reality.
Well, I can give you an answer that's...
Is it a choice even? I don't know.
Choice is a difficult word. So now we're into the badlands of not just psychiatry, but psychoanalytic theory. We got to go to Freud, we got to go Jung, to make it easy for people watching so that they can walk away with something. Like anybody who's teaching psychoanalytic theory would have a shit fit if they heard me say this. But broadly speaking, you have like a black sheep in the family. They can't do right for doing wrong. So if you're the black sheep, it doesn't matter what you do, you can't do right for doing wrong. Then you have golden child. They can't do wrong for doing right. So you could have like a brother and a sister raised together, with 2 brothers in the same environment. One turns towards like hardcore codependency, fawn responding, being servile. And the other one turns towards narcissistic tyranny. Why? Potentially, one potential answer for this would be the entitlement that was installed in them by a parent who's mentally ill. Because what was the environment that they were raised in that was so traumatic? They'd have had mentally ill parents. Splitting is an element of narcissism. You're either all good or you're all bad, or there are parts of you I'll address as though one half of you is good and one half of you is bad. This is mentally ill. thinking, but it's mirrored in the children. So if the parent splits and projects all of if they're mentally ill and weak, essentially, not emotionally mature, all the bad stuff in me that I don't like, that's going in you. You're the black sheep. All the good stuff that I do like, narcissistically, probably fantasy-based, it's going in you, the golden child. It's more likely that child's going to be able to narcissism needs to function. It's a strategy. If you think like military or combat, or you've got like MMA fighters here, they have a strategy that will work in one environment that might not in another environment. So there is evidence in the psychoanalytic theory land that some children try narcissism. They try to become narcissists, but it's beaten out of them. It has to work long enough for the child to take it through into adulthood.
Okay, so this is a great point because I feel like in the way society is moving, in social media and how important social media has become to people's everyday lives, that reward system that you're describing, it's so there in social media now. If you are a narcissist, like we've seen, like I know people who are literally giving out, advice on social media, and you see like these pictures with these quotes that they're posting. Their lives, their personal lives, I know them, are a shit show. Like they don't even.
Wouldn't you even say that's the norm? Like the people who actually are most aggressively online going, be disciplined and clean up your damn room. Well, they turn out to be drug addicts. This was something that Jung noticed. He said that he specifically cited men. He said the more a man publicly talks about discipline and morality and all the rest of it, the more likely he is personally to be in shadow activation and shadow possession. So shadow is the disavowed parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at, we don't want to see. We push them down. But if you do that, they can come back and take you. So the more somebody's performatively saying, I have a morality, I have discipline, I have this and that, who's saying the more likely it is that their life will be, as you say, a fucking shit show.
Absolutely. And it's in that reward system that we've created of likes and clicks and all of this, it gives more than ever, I would assume, narcissists a structure to win. And for this to continue as long as they need it to.
100%. It's an economy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like an ecosystem and an economy.
Cloud chasing.
Call it, yeah, which is profit in that ecosystem. And it now translates to real profit. It's real money. It's not like, you're just acquiring a bunch of digital likes. No, these people are making real money in the real world through those digital likes. And yes, that environment rewards aggressive, psychopathic narcissism, obnoxious, exhibitionist. What's the word?
Exhibitionist.
Thank you.
Yeah. I never thought I'd know a word that you didn't, mate. I tell you.
Let me drink some more coffee.
And going off, look, there's the extreme examples like Andrew Tate, for example, who, shouts about old ways of living your life and men should be men, and meanwhile this man is literally a pimp out here pimping out girls on a webcam, which is the complete opposite of the morality that he, like the hypocrisy within these people, it's rife, and Tate is an extreme example, but I know people who are a lot cleverer than Tate is at disguising it, and they boast about, they're great businessmen and they've achieved this, that, and the other. And the reality is, like, as someone who's in the know, I know that these people who claim to be this, that, and the other, they're talking shit.
Yeah.
And the actions of what because they're clutching at trying to get these clicks, these likes, and this reward system, like people with real fulfillment and self-worth, they don't really give a shit about all that.
No. Well, real fulfillment and self-worth is of no use to that economy. So in a sense, like what I've been railing against for a while, my little soapbox, is consumer capitalism. And honestly, real love, authenticity, and vulnerability is the enemy of consumer capitalism and is the enemy of the social media platforms. If you're in love with your girlfriend, you can have an amazing dopamine-releasing, serotonin-releasing day by taking a walk along the canal here and going and having a fucking sandwich in a little shop. That's useless to me. I want you on my platforms. I want you striving, hurting, anxious that you're not getting likes, envious of others, aggressively competing with others. That's useful to me. Also, you won't buy anything.
Bro. And it's created a world where it's the climbing of the ladder no matter what. Like I will, if I've got to throw you under the bus to get myself ahead, I don't care.
What I would say, I'm not really in the podcast game, but as somebody who consumes it as a customer from the outside looking in, your game, I think, has gotten way nastier in the last 2 years.
So true, bro.
It used to be a bunch of lads just chatting and having a laugh, and now the whole tone, the stance, the positioning of it. And I understand it's capitalism. There's more money in it now than there ever was before. There's real clout. There's people who will be the leaders of countries in the future who are now social media influencers, I believe. They'll all do like a Zelensky type thing.
We'll see people pivot into politics for sure from podcasting.
I've got a mate, trigonometry. I'm looking, Konstantin Kisin, and he's. Do you ever watch Trigonometry? It's like it's a much more political podcast, but brilliant guy. And I'm watching him, and I'm like, I think this is a practice run for something else, and he's doing great at that.
Well, we've seen the London Real guy who tried to become mayor of London. And I mean, you're smirking there, but if we're talking about narcissism, there's a candidate. You know.
What can I say? I've had my run-ins with him since like 2000.
Oh, really? By the way, I had no idea.
No.
This is a genuine...
But what does it mean if you say I've had a run-in with Brian Rose? Like
I've had my...
Who hasn't?
I had a little disagreement with him once, and I found his whole switch up so strange.
Disingenuous.
Yeah.
Really disingenuous. Yeah, and really superficial.
He's nicknamed as the grifter who keeps on grifting now across the internet, and there's someone who could have, if the narcissist in him was under control, he had something special at one. I mean, we're going off on a tangent, but he had something there with London Real, and his mate, who was his best friend, basically was like Nick, I think his name was. He was like, he absolutely stabbed me in the back, got me out the way, and just he couldn't keep himself under control and go for real happiness. It was more.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we can relate this straight back to what we're talking about with narcissistic personality disorder. Nick, the South African lad.
Lovely guy from what I could tell.
Lovely, sincere, and do you know what killed it? He went away, he took psychedelics, he came back to Brian, post-enlightenment on psychedelics, and sat opposite Brian and said, I love you like a brother, and showed him real authentic emotion. He was fucked. You saw Brian's eyes turn. He turned into a reptile. He was like, well, you're gone.
Do you know what it is, mate? It's an interesting point, though, because I've definitely felt like I've come at life in relationships, especially in business, with an open heart, and it has done me no good. It is the amount of people who fuck me over. I'm like, I feel like a whore at this point. It's unbelievable. Unfortunately, this reward system is a big reason for that, I feel like. Because if there wasn't that, I can use you to further myself, then there would be none of that backstabbing, really. There would be no reason for it. But I guess that those people would then have gravitated into a different industry.
Well, and that's where, as an outsider, I'm standing on the sidelines. I mean, it really... I can give multiple examples of this. As being a guest on different podcasts, it was jolly. It was silly. It was like, come on, we'll have here we go. We're going to have a chat. We'll talk about... And then it got super aggressive.
The LA podcast scene, for example, I don't know how aware of it you are, but basically there was a whole thing over there with Joe Rogan is the king.
Yes.
But the minute Joe Rogan moved out of LA into Texas, all of the people who were left seemed to be like, okay, now who's the king? And he kept, and the amount of infighting and bitching and real serious shit went on. And I'm talking about 40, 50-year-old people here. It's embarrassing. And that's what power does, man.
But there was $100 million on the table.
There you go.
And fucking 100 million. You must have seen it in business yourself. Forget 100 million. What will people do for 50 grand?
Yeah.
I mean, they will do horrible things to each other for, 50 grand, way less than that. I mean, around Liverpool and that, people do the worst things a human being could do for far less money than that. For some people, the 100 million and that level of fame, it's almost like some personalities shouldn't be in contact with that kind of money and that kind of fame, because it just warps them completely.
Yeah, they can't control themselves.
Not at all. So that's the narcissistic delusion. So as I think the point that you were sort of making is some people maybe are sort of latent half narcissists, not yet fully formed. Then they're exposed to this social media fame economy. bang, it just destroys them. And they go full narcissist at that point.
And I must admit, I definitely had a moment where I felt like I'm slipping away here.
Yeah.
Like when a kid from Newcastle gets more money than he ever expected to, I was indulgent and there was not a lot of self-control. It was, let me buy this car I don't need. Let me spend money on shit. And I had to have a humbling. Yeah. And I really did have a humbling, and I'm so grateful for that, because it helped me snap out of that road I was going down, and that isn't me.
Were you going to show up on yachts with your nunchaku, lines of coke, and
bro, it was embarrassing, man. I look back at some pictures of myself, and I genuinely hate what I'm looking at. I'm like, you fucking prat.
But that's what you get rewarded for.
Absolutely.
So there's a point you made before, like, so you mentioned authenticity. If me and you want to become the top level social media influencers, deep conversations about vulnerability and authenticity ain't going to get us there. It's yachts, it's girls in thongs, it's being the obnoxious prick who's like, what colour's your Lambo?
And the people who suck those people off, and it's embarrassing. They're more embarrassing, actually. I think I find the friendship groups around those people the most embarrassing, because you're the reason that this narcissist has not been able to even have a prayer of waking up, because you're positively reinforcing all of this crap.
100%. And I mean, it usually takes me longer to get to that point. Like, what you're talking about is what the real pandemic is. It's not a pandemic of narcissism. It's a pandemic of indulgence. They say that, like, at the moment, the most recent research I looked at, 6% of the population of males have full-blown clinical MPD. It's quite high. 4% of females. How is that happening? How are we, the rest of the tribe, allowing some of our tribal members, 4 out of 100, to act like absolute arseholes? Because we only define narcissistic personality disorder by the social interactions. You have to behave very badly to the people around you. You're almost on a sliding scale of psychopathy at that point.
Okay.
And it's us that's indulging them. Why do we do that? We didn't always. If we were in a smaller tribal situation, if somebody was being a real dick and not working and not hunting and stealing your hunt, he just wouldn't come back from a hunt, wouldn't they? We'd go fishing and then suddenly he'd fall in the river.
Social media brings comparison, and comparison is the thief of joy, as they say, right? So a lot of people feel inferior.
Yeah.
And they're looking at these people who are winning, as they say.
Yes.
And they're aspiring to have that one day. So even though, because when you've never had the money, it feels like the be-all and end-all. And that's why I was so drawn to the car and the thing that I've never had before. Once you get in it, I mean, it really is. I mean, after the first few times, it's anticlimactic. You realize, what the fuck have I done here? But you have to kind of experience that to realize it is not what people make it out to be. And that happiness, as you say, is going down and getting a sandwich with your lass and having a nice day.
Yep.
That's actually true happiness. The rest of it, it's just... what car you're driving is really irrelevant at that moment.
It's like you say, I mean, it's just you sat on your arse in a fucking car going somewhere. The whole point of the rest of it is the reactions you get from other people.
That's exactly right, by the way.
So
that's the fucking drug.
That's what you pay for.
Absolutely.
Like, you can drive a nice second-hand BMW for about 25 grand. You don't need a Lambo for
But the point for me, what you've just really nailed into a memory of mine was, if I was driving that lovely car down a country road with no one on the country road, it would be nice. But I wouldn't be getting that dopamine fucking flooding into the brain. But when I was in Newcastle and I knew people were going, there he is, that I got off on that.
Yes.
And I'm ashamed of saying that, to be honest, but it's the reality of it. I really did enjoy it, because in my head, I was still that poor kid showing everyone, look at me now.
Yeah.
But really, like, they didn't care. All right, they cared for a second, and then they went back to their life and didn't give a fuck.
But your brain, our dumb brains, because of the way we've evolved, still give us the reward.
Yeah.
And it's whether you fall prey to the trick, you're going, wow, this is really good, I'm the man. or do you have the moment of reflection to be like, you might not be them. You might just be a prick in a loud car.
Genuinely, that is exactly what I was. And mate, you've absolutely fucking nailed it. And unfortunately... yeah, that is what everyone seems to be chasing, though. that's the goal for a lot of people out there.
It's really sad. I was just saying, I'm moving to Dubai. I'm moving the business, everything over there, and there's a really, really strong narcissistic, materialistic culture there. There's even an area, I think it's called JBR, where everybody goes to drive their Ferraris, their Lambos, and they just clog it up with traffic on a Friday, Saturday night. And all it is people just looking at each other in different cars, and that's the night out. That's the fun. How stupid are we as human animals to think that that's a good use of time? What you mentioned before about having the experience, though, that's what, if you're going to talk like spirituality and real emotional growth, that's transcendence. It's not to avoid it. It's to make the money, buy the car, sit in it, fart in it, and go, this is the same as farting in a Vauxhall Axel. It's the same. It doesn't fly over traffic.
Well, this is the funny thing that happened the other day is I had an issue with my car, got an insurance car, and it was one of the worst cars I've ever driven in my life, right? It was a Toyota, but it was like the lowest version of a Toyota I've ever fucking driven in. And it had been God knows how many years since I'd driven in a car like that, since I was 18. And I actually liked it.
Yeah.
And I actually thought, you know what? Here's me grafting my balls off to try and, show people. Yeah. And now I'm back in this car. I'm like, God, what the fuck have I been doing? Like, it just made us laugh because I was like, this is perfectly good. And one thing, just to pivot into relationships with a narcissist, because I find this fascinating because I've definitely witnessed them, and I wouldn't necessarily say I'd been in a relationship with a narcissist, but definitely felt not heard, not listened to, and been in that scenario that you told before about you're trying to use logic against someone who's really in a fantasy world. So can you describe what that side of what you've learned about is like? So
for anybody who is in a relationship with a narcissist, or they suspect they are, the jump off point that I would always say is like, remember that there's no such thing as equal with a narcissist. Their sense of what equal is, they hate horizontal. They hate adult-to-adult communication. That's no good. They're a kind of a god in their own universe. So in transactional analysis terms, they don't do adult-adult, vulnerable communication. They do parent-child communication. So they're top-down. So they're very hierarchical. And for them, vertical and standing over you, that's equal. And when you shift it and you're like, hang on wait a sec. No, it'll be more equal if we're both doing, they're like, no, they get stressed, they get angry. You can actually inflict narcissistic injury, which induces then narcissistic rage, which means they'll be punishing you in a disproportionate and extremely hostile way for a long time, just by asking for decent human behavior. Just by you asking them to be a reasonable adult, to calm down, to come and have a chat, to go to counseling, to fix the problem, you'll induce narcissistic injury.
Is one of the things that they do threatening?
It's one of the 9 traits from the DSM. It's extremely bullying and threatening behavior. In complex post-traumatic stress disorder terms, we call this the narcissistic personality disorder is a fight-fawn response. So their way of acting in the world is to bully love out of people. They're emotional terrorists. They're gun to the head. Love me or else. But not just love me, worship me. Submit to me or else. So that, bullying. If you felt bullied, if you're not in a relationship with an MPD, you're in a narcissistically.
I've definitely been in a situation before where someone's made threats when I wasn't agreeing to whatever the issue was at the time, and I remember feeling like something was hanging over me. It's certainly not pleasant. No. And in terms of how does that differ from male to female? Because obviously, not necessarily nowadays, but like stereotypically, men are the strong one, women are the soft feminine one. And how does this come out of them in different ways?
Well, men and women are biologically different. Mm-hmm. For sure, we're stronger.
We'll have less of that on this show. All right,
I've come on one of these male feminist podcasts. The threat level, of course, is different, and it's very, very hard within psychoanalytic theory, within psychiatry and psychotherapy, for us to really parse which parts of these things are cultural and which parts of these are biological. like what's learned and what's innate. So of course, narcissistic abuse being played out by a man would be different to a woman. If a man goes to the point of physical violence, we'll then say this is psychopathic and narcissistic abuse because he could be arrested for it, which means that's psychopathy. With female narcissistic abuse, it's probably going to be harder to tell. So if you come over here now and grab me and rip my shirt and go, fucking do as you fucking told or smash it, even if you don't punch me, if we catch it on camera, it's obvious I'm under threat. If a woman says to me, I say to a woman, I'm going to go and see my family now, and she says, yeah, go on then. And I get this feeling like, oh, fuck. Yeah, go on, go see your family. Like you do, you bastard.
Yeah.
It doesn't say you bastard, and you just feel it. Who are you going to tell? Well, I told my girlfriend I was coming to see you, and do you know what she said to me? Go on then. Well, fine. What's the problem? It's the meta communication is the way that they'll because, and this isn't me having a pop at women. It's just, what would I do if I was in an environment surrounded by people who are a third heavier than me and a third stronger than me, and they could potentially punch me in the face? Well, I'm not going to box them, am I? Like, oh, I'll be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert. No, I have to work psychologically. I have to work emotionally. We have to work on reputation.
You have to use the tools that you've got.
100%.
And I think that's one thing that, and I'm certainly, I want to give balance to a situation here because men and women are under very different kinds of threats, I feel like. And that's sort of a subtlety that seems to be glossed over in society now because women don't feel safe. We've got women going missing. There's that girl who's just gone missing recently. And with men, obviously, by nature, they are more violent. So it is a lot easier to spot when a woman is in a traumatic relationship because there will be those signs that are more obvious. They leave physical marks. Men will lash out.
Yeah.
But women, if there's one thing that I've witnessed in friends' relationships is that level of psychological bullying that men are enduring out there right now that isn't really spoken about because men don't want to admit, they feel like a pussy, they feel like a little bitch, and they're being tortured to an extent on a daily basis, some of these guys, and it is very hard to speak out, but also for other people to notice it.
Yes, and we've gone there. So let's be fully inclusive. There are men who also psychologically torture women. We call this like covert or vulnerable narcissism. Okay. Covert vulnerable narcissism could go that way. They just prefer that. That's their preferred. It makes them feel more powerful than if they have to be physically threatening. You can have in female-female relationships. You can have covert and vulnerable abuse, and you can have psychopathic abuse in male-male relationships.
And by covert, you mean like cleverly sort of hidden, where you're abusive, but you're not doing it to a degree where people can put the finger on you.
Exactly.
You're seen as difficult rather than abusive.
Exactly. And we're into the realms now where within psychiatry, they'll argue about the categories because why is it covert? Well, it's to distinguish you from what we call the grandiose classic narcissist. Grandiose classic narcissist turns up like Patrick Bateman, red Ferrari, super handsome guy, extremely promiscuous, no empathy, very, very cruel, so on and so forth. Now with the categories, they're sort of saying that's probably a psychopath. So it's all, and then some people in the community are saying when we talk about narcissism, it's all on a spectrum of covert narcissism. It's all compensatory because if you feel very strong, you would behave psychopathically, and you can afford to behave psychopathically. If your position is a little weaker and you have to be more manipulative, you have to use narcissism. So yes, like basically in answer to your question, yes, it is that. And there are men out there who are suffering the way that women do, just under psychological abuse. The difference as recipients, as a man who's been in narcissistically abusive relationships, is, it's much harder. I'm not equipped to be like, oh, I'll go and tell my male friends, or I'll go to a counselor and say, hey, I feel really unseen.
Men don't talk like that.
Men don't talk like that. We don't have the fucking vocabulary. Yeah. I had to learn it over years and be like, well, what does it mean if you're unseen? Well, actually, it's very painful because, yes, I'm a man and there's an adult male side of me that really isn't bothered whether I'm seen or not, but there's also a child inside of me. When we're so you mentioned romance before. Once we're in romantic relationships, all your armor is off and you become two children together, which is right, which is good. it's also very dangerous because your boundaries are down, abuse can seep into that shared space. But of course, your needs as a child then, as your inner child comes out, go up. You do need to be seen. You don't want to be humiliated. You don't want it really hurt. Like, if I humiliate you in public, you'll be like, oh, he's a bit of a prick. Never mind. I doubt it would last more than 3 hours. You'd be like, oh, what a bellend, and then you'd have a drink and you forget about it. If your girlfriend who you trust does that, you go into a spiral. It could last like 5 or 6 days. Why did she do that? Does she really love me? Can I really trust her? The gamble is that much higher. You're risking so much more. You've placed so much more on that relationship. I'm looking at you. I'm kind of talking to the men watching. Don't feel ashamed if you feel a massive amount of anxiety when you're in this situation with a woman who has not done anything awful to you that you can go to the police with, but maybe she humiliated you, or maybe she devalued your needs, and you'd be like, whoa, why am I so weak? Think about the gamble. How much have you invested? How much have you staked on this one relationship? What's the pain and the cost if it breaks down tomorrow? If it's high, no wonder you're anxious. You have a right to be anxious. You have a right to be frightened.
And as a man, we are at a significant disadvantage when it comes to legally separating if you're in a marriage, for example, because you will get butt-fucked in prison. In court. I'll say that one more time.
Was that a Freudian slip there, mate?
I really want to leave it in. Okay, people understand what I'm saying is that you will get butt-fucked in court. Like, men don't have the same rights as women if there's children involved and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's why in those relationships, men, they don't have the same power as when they first met that woman. You know what I mean? As things change. And when women become aware of that, and if you're with someone who is that way inclined to use things in that nasty way, you are going to feel that cloud above your head, like, oh God, like, you know, how do we navigate this scenario? And that's when men do spiral, from what I can tell.
100%. Well, I mean, I coach and I work with a 90% female audience, and I've been doing this for 10 years. So I really have a much, much better understanding of the female perspective now. And what I would say is, for the men, if you think you're just going to jump on the mats with a BJJ 3rd degree black belt in emotional manipulation because you have a bit of banter with your mates at the pub, she's going to snap something off you.
That's such a great way of describing it, by the way.
And you'll never recover.
Yeah.
That's what I went through, because I was like, I have a degree in psychology. Let's see what you got. And I was like, wow, that hurt. And it took me years to get over it. And she wasn't even really trying. It was her natural, spontaneous, just because from the age of 12, 13, young girls in secondary school, we have a problem with a girl in my family. I love her, but she's 15. And I take her boxing, I take her to do weights. She's tough, man. Oh. She's hard going. But like you said, you use the tools that you have. So young men, we play fight, we wrestle. What's she doing? She's clawing everybody psychologically. She's her mother, the people in her family, because that's her practicing for the real world. So she's developing her teeth and her claws now, but it's psychological. So you think imagine we jump in the ring with somebody the same age as us who's been doing Muay Thai since they're 6, just every day, banging out the kicks, they're banging out the punches. Westerners, we never catch up.
So on that, I feel like when I had some of my relationships when I was younger, I was at a bit of a disadvantage because I'd been raised by a single mother who loved me, doted on me, devoted to me, was just soft and gentle and kind. And then I went and met women. And I'm like...
See the way he said that?
Yeah.
Women.
You know? And I'm like, oh, like, and look, I'm not saying I was a perfect guy by any means, you know, but I had an expectation because of what I was conditioned to.
Yes.
Whereas I was at a major disadvantage in this game because I didn't even know there was a game about to be played. Everyone, to be fair, was going to be a step down in my head from that, but some were a cliff drop, right? And for that reason, so when I'm in there with a manipulator who has been raised by people who don't give a fuck, like no love, you know? So we're coming at it from angles, and I'm like, oh no, like this is not how life is. And my dad described it as this, and I'm going to use this example of, we were sitting in the bedroom, in the living room once, and he was like, you see that carpet? Relationships are like that carpet, and you start off with kind of like 50% each, and you start trading, and as the relationship goes on, one person will be gaining more ground, you know what I mean? I was not aware that this was even a thing. I'm like, let me just be a nice guy. Not that I was smothering them with love nice, but I was just coming in it with good intentions. And there was times where I was, again, wrapped up with a strangulation around my neck with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu style, not really understanding, oh shit, we're playing this game, are we? And before I knew it, like, because that's when my dad was saying things to me where I was like, I rekindled sort of my relationship with him. He was like, don't make them apologize. You'll regret it. They'll make you regret it. You know, like, because he was with a woman who was conditioning him to that. And I was like, fuck me. You know, I learned a lot in those early years, you know what I mean? And not necessarily good stuff.
What sort of age were you when you started learning this stuff?
I remember having a moment where I was in a relationship in my sort of early 20s, and I remember thinking I was being lied to. I was being lied to about reasons why I can't go to the gym, or reasons why I can't do what I enjoy and be out with the lads. And I realized I'm being conditioned here by someone who wants me to do what they want to do and not for me to just be happy, you know? And as time went by, I remember thinking, if I don't start fighting back in this relationship, I'm going to lose who I am. And that's me. Like, people look at me like big, strong, alpha male, confident guy. I was in a situation where through time and consistency, I was ground down into a shadow of the man I was, confident, outgoing, everyone knows me, Jack the lad, to like asking if I can go for a drink.
I shouldn't laugh.
No.
But I've lived it, so I know what it's like.
Bro, you laugh, mate, because it was fucking ridiculous. And that shit happens to men out there where we're like, we catch ourselves one day and it's like, when the fuck did this happen? And that was where I thought, you know what, like, if I don't start telling you to fuck off and I'll do what I want, I ain't gonna come back from this. And I'll be, you know, like, and I remember being in a relationship, I'm really confessing now. I remember being in a relationship with one girl, and she was talking to me like a piece of shit. And I had this moment, and I'd met her parents, and I noticed that her mother would talk to her father like a piece of crap. And her father, they had a couple, like 3 kids, and he was really nice guy. And I grew up with my dad barely being there, and, you know, Papa was a Rolling Stone. And I'm like, you know, your dad's actually like a great guy, and you guys don't talk to him the way you should. Like, provider, you guys have never wanted for anything, paid your university fees, like, you got everything that I didn't necessarily get, you know what I mean? And she started giving me that same attitude that her mother gave her dad. And I remember like being like, a couple of weeks went by and I was like, whoa. I see where this is going. I seen this unappreciated man in the corner just getting his little guitar time in when he could. Just the only time he's ever fucking happy was when he was alone with his guitar. And I'm like, bro, that ain't gonna be me. I want to be spoken to with respect or not at all.
His balls on top of the refrigerator.
Bro.
He's playing his guitar.
I felt so sorry for this poor little man. I'm like, you're a lovely guy and no one respects you. You know why? Because you haven't fought. And there was a point where, and like many men do, he thought it was easier when he was in his 20s or 30s to say, yes, dear. But you know what that yes, dear was to give him an easy life? It ended his life. Any chance of any self-worth and happiness was gone there because he just handed his ball sack over.
100%. 100%.
Sorry, I'm off my soapbox.
No, it's okay. It's okay. There's a little bit you need to get out there. It's free therapy.
Sharing's caring.
Free therapy. I was laughing because I was just flashing, as you were talking, flashing back to my teens, you know, like I had a shit family life. Eventually my dad ended up in prison for what he was doing with his family. But I dissociated. I went into sci-fi books and fucking sword and sorcery novels and magic, LSD, Buddhism, Sufism. I was a little mystical kid, proper little hippie. And then I'd get the same thing, like in relationships. I'd do okay with girls, and people are like, oh, girls really like you. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. And I'd just be thinking, it's all good. And then I'd be in these scenarios and these arguments, and I'm like, I don't even know what we're arguing. Like, what are you trying to do? I don't. And it would slip past me for a couple of years because I just didn't get it. I just let them do. You couldn't cheat on me. You couldn't lie to me because I didn't care. I was hardly in this world practically. And then slowly when I got my degree and I got invested in money and running a business and I started to become material, then it was a problem. Then I was like, hang on a second. I'm getting out off here. But I started way behind, way behind. I turn 45 in 2 weeks. I think I'm just about getting it. Seriously. Like it's not easy to begin with. There's a lot that men need to learn. There's a lot of software upgrades we need to get that we just don't get. And the culture that we've created as human beings right now just doesn't support that. It doesn't support.
You mean the learning of men to become more able to understand the language and the manipulation that they can be subjected to?
100%.
Yeah, because we're just not on their level. Women are leaps and bounds ahead because they talk so much to each other. Like, again, I've had like so few conversations with my boys about like when like the real shit that goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Like,
well, how can you?
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, right? Because the stuff you've let women say to you that you would never want anybody to know. The stuff that you've let a girl know. You've been in emotional states where you've been crying and begging, and who are you gonna tell?
Yeah.
You'll take that to the grave as a man. So like shame, guilt, all of that locks us up. That's a further thing that can start to happen. Before anybody gets too comfortable with this and starts thinking it's just like a red pill manosphere conversation, I actually think there's a good, and all men need to understand this. Women do act, and historically always have had, women are more important than men because they produce life. The only thing that men can do is take life. They say the oldest job in the world is prostitution, right? Well, the oldest job for men in the world is being a killer. I can pay you, I can give you a bead, and you can go and kill my enemy for me. So you have soldiers and prostitutes. At our most basic, at our most barbaric, that's what we are. We kill, women can give life. They choose. They're the gatekeepers of future generations. I had this revelation once. I was watching an alpha male lion, not in real life, on a YouTube video, on a rock. And the lionesses around him decided on a dime, collectively, he was done being an alpha male. And they fucking went for him. That lion screamed in pain as they tried to bite his nuts off. You know the tendons in the legs of a lion? They're sinking their teeth into that to get him off the rock. The other lions, the male lions, run over, and I think, oh, they're going to finish him off now. No, to save him. The other male lions who want his position come over and save him, because these lionesses are like, your time is fucking done. That shocked me. I laughed when I saw it. And the lion's screaming, and it's clear distress. Like it's a fucking lion. He was the alpha lion. The females got rid of him in 6 or 7 minutes, and he was broken. He knew he was done. He wasn't going to fight back. He wasn't going to. And I thought, why is that like that? Those lionesses, it's not, oh, you're a good guy, or you've tried really hard, Mr. Lion. It's you are not the strongest option. And we are genetically programmed. We have to only let the strongest option through. Mate, you're not it. Sorry about that. Sorry it hurts your feelings.
You know, this is a fantastic point that you're making, because actually the more I'm learning right now about the dating game is that because of that and because of social media, I feel partly, that's my own opinion, is that the statistics vary, but apparently like 80% of women are only trying to fuck 20% of men.
Yes, I heard that on Chris Williams.
Chris is a big guy who I'm listening to a lot right now. Shout out to him. Love the guy. I could talk to him a lot. But also there's a lot of people perpetuating that statistic as well. And there's a lot of data actually backing it up where... And part of this problem, I think, is social media as well, because we're getting to see the pecking order. It's right there. Like,
Yes.
you know, in fucking World War II, you know, you meet a nice guy, oh, yeah, cool. You don't really have the gauge, the scale to look at the way you do on Instagram recommended.
Yep.
Now, you know, the girl I thought had a big butt 5 years ago, I now see bigger butts every day. Like, you know, and it's changing my brain here to become accustomed to a certain thing. And I'm sure women are getting changed as well by that.
Yeah, by bigger yachts.
Yeah, fucking bigger. A lot of things are probably, and that is human nature, and the nature of our species is to try and seek out the not necessarily always the athletically strongest, but the strongest of the species in terms of what they can provide, and et cetera, et cetera.
And that's another thing that I think men need to catch up on. Everybody needs to catch up on. Like, obviously, there's two men talking here, but it's not a women are bad, men are good thing. It's a competition thing.
Absolutely.
So here's something that I'll say on behalf of women, and I don't know how women have let men get away with this. We have a thing called a gold digger, right? So a woman who only wants a man who has good resources, she's called a gold digger, and we allow that. What do you call a man who only dates beautiful women? He should be called a beauty digger or a youth digger, or why do we get away with it?
Leonardo DiCaprio's getting a little bit of shit for it.
Yes,
now.
they'll probably find a name for him.
He's really taking the piss. This guy's 49 going out with 19-year-olds. Jesus.
He just doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But I think like we have to start having a more honest and open conversation about the savagery within us all. The savagery within me, the savagery within you, it's in women. We are tough. I mean, what we have gone through to get here, so there's 8 million of us with artificial lights and calories everywhere in multiple different flavors. We have been through fucking hell and back. There is a savagery to us. Like, yes. My thing now is like, don't hate women for wanting high resource men. And don't hate men for wanting what they want in women. Why is it like this? Because I have quite a famous geneticist in the family, a published geneticist, and I chat to her about this a lot. Largely speaking, your looks as a child come from your mum, but your intelligence and your resourcefulness come from your dad. So women are going to be looking for somebody who means that their children will survive. It's all genetics. We're looking for a healthy, good-looking woman so that the children survive, so that our DNA passes on. It's not conscious. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to like bypass a really good soul, but she's not that good looking. I always say to people like, it's not charity. This is survival. This is my DNA. Of course I'm going to get in the competition. And I think this is where men fall behind is we're not trained to compete. We're not trained to think of it as being a competitive space. It's like, if I'm a nice guy, because you watch a romantic comedy and you watch a Disney movie and you talk to your mum, that's what most of us did. That's how most of us grew up. No, if I'm a nice guy and I do good things, at the end of it, I'll be rewarded with a good girl. Good fucking luck with that.
And on to your point, going back to Chris's statistical work, is that more men than ever are reporting long time, I think it's like a year without having sex.
Yes.
More men than ever are going without sex.
Yes.
But what's happening is at the top end, those men be fucking more than anyone.
Yes, like, I know. Yeah, it's a very busy schedule.
and that's the crazy thing, bro, is like, so it's more lopsided than it's ever been, because now the ability to connect with more people through social media is right there. So these men can go and DM as many girls as they want, get as many girls as they want, their schedule's packed, and then you've got the normal guys out there who, and these women, to be fair to them, are looking at that high value man and thinking, here is an opportunity, not realizing you're that ain't the guy. But because genetics are imploring them to go for the high value man, they're not able to sort of to think logically about what options he's got.
Yes.
Because he kind of is the belle of the ball now. Yes. This man in question that I'm creating. And these women who are drawn to him, unfortunately, you're probably not going to be the one he chooses. So the guys who you're looking at thinking, he's not really, that's probably where you're actually going to end up, ironically, after being...
that cuts both ways. I choose I'm 45. I choose a really hot 26-year-old. Do you think that's going to work out well for me?
Yeah, exactly.
This girl with tons of options in the peak of her youth and the peak of her attractiveness, yeah, she may have a little bit of an attitude problem sometimes. And I've actually, just to this point, I've stayed friends in the last 5 years, thankfully, with ex-girlfriends, which I'm really grateful for because I get great data from them.
Oh,
I
really?
get the inside track. So an ex-girlfriend of mine, she showed me 2 guys that she's involved with. She's a good-looking girl. She has choice. And I joke with her about this. She's mainly, there's one guy is beautiful. This is a very good-looking guy by any standards. He's athletic. He easily could be a model. He doesn't keep her awake at night. He's not the one that she's obsessed with. There's this other dude. God bless him. Look, if you put these 2 men together, you as a man, because we judge on looks predominantly, you'd be like, obviously the Chad, not this scrawny dude who looks like a chicken. Because of his personality, his status in the world, his access to resources. She even told me it's his connection to other people. She's like, I know it's not logical, but this is what I want. This is what obsesses me.
And the older she gets, the more that will appeal. For sure.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
What she said. She said the 24-year-old me would have chosen the super hot Chad.
Of course.
But now she's looking at 27, 28. She's like, no, this is... And I'm like, but is this spontaneous? Or do you have to convince yourself to be sexually attracted to him? She said, nope. I am more sexually attracted to him. My body is telling me to breed with that man.
Wow.
And we laugh about it. I've sent her screenshots. I'm like, so side by side, you still saying what you're saying now? Here's him with the shirt off on his Instagram. Here's the Chad with the shirt. What are you saying? She's like, I can't help this. And she's like laughing.
And I think in London, the thing I learned from London, basically, because in Newcastle, people still settle down earlier, I would say.
Yeah.
But in London, it's, people tend not to settle down till they're like 30 to 40 or whatever. Is even the men, I feel, are also taking it on board that now because they're being conditioned a little bit as well. So maybe not so much on a genetic level, but men are also interested more in status now and what women can do.
Well, without getting myself in trouble, I suspect that's because the gender roles are just morphing.
Mate, so true.
Yeah, like men are becoming women, women are becoming men. I mean, becoming. London was the nexus point for me. I first saw this, the last time I lived in London was the last time I lived in London. I just can't tolerate it here. But the dating scene there, back in 2013, you'd see that. Women acting like fellas and fellas acting like women. That's from me, from Liverpool. I was just like, what are you all doing down here? Why is everything upside down? So yeah.
And I guess it's because women in London, the financial situation is now, women are kind of fucked, and I feel for them in that sense. In London, because they're fucked because of their own success. They've gotten to a point where they're earning such a good wage and they're so intelligent and they've done so well, but women don't want to date down financially. They want to date up, but the men don't give a fuck. Men who are earning above them, they're like, I just want a hot chick who's going to look after me and be nice to me. I don't give a fuck about what you're earning generally, and women do care. Yeah,
they do. 100%. Like, I've got ex-girlfriends I'm still friends with. I have a lot of women. I like to talk to women to get, to find out, like. And they'll say to me, okay, I've seen you do this YouTube video and I've seen you do the rant I just sort of did now. What's the solution for me? I'm like, I don't know. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to tell you because we can't issue individual solutions for a societal problem. That 80-20 thing that the Chris Williams cited. I don't think it's 80-20. I did nightclub security again last year because I just wanted to go back on the door and just reconnect with my mates and stuff. It's not 80-20. You're talking like 95-5. Seriously. There's not 20% of men who are really... I think the perception is they do well with women. So I know a lot of guys, there's a perception there is, but actually taking girls home and actually... It's a fraction of that. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. It's actually worse than the statistics indicate.
That makes sense because the attention that... Like, I kind of felt like I relived my early 20s in terms of attention, when I became successful.
At what age did you become successful?
Well, I'd say like 30, for example.
And you noticed at 30, you were like, hey, I'm hot again.
Yeah. It was like a...
Did I get a facelift?
But it's like, I'd put weight on, like, I'm what's going on here? And I was like, okay, like, I get it. I'm becoming something here that I wasn't before.
You're really trying not to say high value man.
Oh, I don't like that. Yeah, but like,
right.
it's Andrew Tate speaking.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Like I get this red pill thing, and we're kind of sort of heading towards that a little bit with this chat.
Yeah.
And you know, for those who don't really understand, how would you describe it as someone who doesn't understand this red pill theory that men are gravitating towards now?
It's a response to feminism. So feminism was a response to domination. So you have this echo effect. Then feminism comes along and you have your suffragettes, women going for equal rights. Your first wave feminism sounds pretty good to me. Then it becomes second wave, third wave. Then by the fourth wave, it's women are amazing and men are shit. Let's get rid of them.
It's very aggressive, for sure.
It's super aggressive.
And I think it's definitely attacked masculinity in a way where we've heard words like toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and I'm not saying that there wasn't a reason for people coming up with that initially.
Yeah.
But it has just become, it's gone crazy.
Well, and there's a terrible I mean, I studied feminism at university and I found it useful as a weapons system. So if I wanted to attack mainstream scientific psychology, which I didn't know how to because I was annoyed with it, frustrated, whatever, feminism gave me the tools to do that, which to me that proves it's more of an ideology than a true philosophy. It's a response to. Similarly, and it's kind of therefore intrinsically impotent, in my humble opinion. Similarly, the red pill is intrinsically impotent. It's an ideology, and it's it hates women, and this kind of hates men.
Yeah, I've seen some of those guys where, and look, they do make some good points.
Of course.
And that is why a person like an Andrew Tate rises to power, is because, they will say some smart stuff.
Yeah.
In amongst the things that whip people up and fuck them, and on both sides. And I feel that way about a lot of things, politics as well, like any far opinion usually is just extreme, and yes, there will be some dollops of truth in there, but it's nonsense, a lot of it.
It's nonsensical, and I think the proof of that is you go, okay, where's the happiness here? Where's the joy here? Like, you got the MGTOW movement. I've always spoken to the MGTOW movement in this way, and they take it, thankfully, because they're resilient.
What is that? Sorry, I don't know.
Men go their own way.
Oh, right.
They just abandon the playing field. And I'm like, what's that? Like, you're just never going to get with a woman again.
PlayStation and porn.
That's it. And sex dolls. I'm like, are you kidding me?
And then women have their cats and their loneliness.
And I can, like, when I was first exposed to it in 2013, I had some good online arguments, some robust red-blooded arguments and everything, but it was a bit of a joke. It's not a joke anymore. Like, these statistics that are coming out, younger and younger people are having less and less sex.
And it's taking longer and longer for people to actually get in committed relationships and marriage and have children, if at all.
But look, our culture doesn't support it.
And do you think from the narcissistic side of it, just to bring it back a little bit, obviously, it's a kind of a medical thing, narcissists, but in terms of what I've experienced in relationships in my life is more and more people are coming into relationships now and thinking, how does this benefit me?
Yes.
What can this do for me?
Yes.
And at the point where not enough people are thinking, what can I give to this person and how can I make this person happy?
100%.
And I kind of feel like some of the women I've met in my life have gone like, there's a mythical man out there who will put up with everything because I'm perfect, and he will find me and he will realize I am perfect. And I'm looking at this person thinking, while you're so broken, you are never going to meet someone who is going to come along and accept all of this craziness that I'm dealing with right now. And and it was funny because there was that one person I was referring to. I remember thinking, like, you're never going to have a successful relationship. And, as you do, you realize, they've met someone. I'm like, how? How have you met someone? How have you actually got a relationship that's working? Yeah. And then I realized it was like this on again, off again guy that she sees like once in a while. He lives in a different country, and I'm like, that's why he thinks you're good. He hasn't actually had to spend multiple days a week with you.
You're just doing nice holiday, a weekend in Paris, Turin. Everything's wonderful,
bro. I was like, that's why, because the minute you actually move in with this guy, and he will realize you are, and it goes back to the things that we said earlier in the podcast about like those little subtleties of, are you? Like, there was things I'd say, just so innocently offer up a vulnerability, and I'd be met with You know, like that look and that response, and I instantly felt like, oh, I'm weird, or I'm bad, or I'm off, or I'm wrong, or. And reality was, it was just, you can't be vulnerable around someone like that. You just can't, because they will break you down slowly.
In that scenario, anything you say can and will be used against you. That's just weaponry. You're giving them ammunition. There's so much that you said there. The first thing, the first thing that I wanted to deal with was, yes, showing up to a relationship as a consumer, showing up to a relationship as having been indoctrinated from childhood in consumer capitalism. Why wouldn't you treat the person like a faulty app? Why wouldn't you treat them like a delivery of something that wasn't quite right for you?
I felt like that. A faulty app. You've nailed it. I'm a project.
Yeah.
You know.
You're good, but I'm giving you a 6 out of 10 on Yelp right now. We can work this up to an 8. And that's inhuman. I mean, that's not the meeting of two human beings. So you have like a narcissism light. It's not full delusional break with reality, but it's a narcissism light, and it's inculcated. And I'm not receiving any negative feedback from the environment. Nobody's coming to me and saying, Richard, these girls, these women, they're people. They're not things. Somebody said to me recently, in this culture, we've learned to love people. We're supposed to love people and use things, but now we love things and use people. So we've commodified humans, and we're trying to consume love. And it's like, was this the 5-star luxury holiday relationship I was hoping for? No, it's not really good enough. Maybe there's a better one. Swipe, and you're gone. And it's like, okay, that's now we're engaging, and this is beyond narcissism. This is psychopathy. That's a person. That you're talking to a human. They were a child once. They have pain, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have fears. You can't treat people like this. Chris Rock, in his special called Tambourine in 2018, the bit that he finishes with goes into, he's not long come out of a divorce at that point as a multimillionaire, 49-year-old at that time. He's got to start again and date, but he's also famous. It must be a fucking nightmare for him.
Yeah.
And he's saying retroactively what he wished he'd done in the relationship. And he said, you must sacrifice. You show up ready to sacrifice and ready to give for the relationship. Both of you.
Nailed it.
Or you've got nothing. It
should be a giving contest.
Of course.
Not who can take the most. And that I feel like that's where
we are.
My previous relationships have gone wrong in times, you know what I mean? And look, I've definitely done that as well. Because you slip into the habit as well. If someone else is doing that, you get lost in this contest.
Yeah.
And when I've been at my happiest is when I've been giving the most, and and that person has also been giving the most.
Yes, you must both give, you must both sacrifice. And people who find that, like if you see that on YouTube and you're like, I want to write a comment about that, and that's you I'm talking to.
Yeah.
You've got the problem. You lack humility. You are not perfect. I am not perfect. None of us are perfect. You're going to, I'd love doing this in seminars, and people say, oh, do you want a relationship? And they go, yes, I want a relationship. So I look into the crowd, it's mainly women. I'll be like, so you want to live with one man in one house for decades? And they kind of go, I'm like, sorry, what were you thinking a relationship was? That's what it is. You're going to live with another dumb fucking human being in the same space for years on end. And you think it's going to be like a non-stop party and non-stop pleasure? That's insane. Only this generation came to believe that. Nobody before believed that was...
Because we're dopamine fiends. We're not in that... We're not understanding that the boring, that's the good stuff.
Yes.
And one of my favourite speeches when we talk about the movies is Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting, when he talks about the way his wife would fart when before she died.
She farted.
Yeah.
She woke up the dog.
And I love the way he's like, it's the crust of a person. It's not just the middle bit. It's everything.
Yeah.
And it's that boring, repetitive, getting up every day and just being around each other as your other person.
Yeah.
That is the best bit about it. And I just feel like we don't... Because people are chasing the grandiose bullshit, they don't appreciate that.
I just don't see how somebody who is subsumed in this culture has any chance of doing an intimate relationship whatsoever. If you're into this culture and the coordinates of this culture, you're screwed.
Bro, that is exactly why I avoid those kind of as I learned, I got some painful lessons, bro. I had this is me coming from a man's point of view, but when a person makes you want to kill yourself, the way I felt after that situation. And unfortunately, it's not just been the one person I've had that feeling with in my life, but when they bring you that low, when they bring you to your knees where you're questioning, what is the point in life if I feel so miserable?
Yep.
When anyone in a relationship makes you feel that way, man or woman, fuck me, get the hell out. Because or get the hell away from them, as far away from them as you can, because they're the ones who, they don't care. You are just a resource to be drained. And if once you're surplus to requirements, we will just discard you, destroy you. You mean nothing to that person.
Well, they might even have more of a serial killer mindset. They might see you as a scalp.
And that's the nastiness. And that's something I don't have in me. As much as I might look like big tattooed up guy, I'm an open-hearted person, you know, and I feel like it's really fucked me over because when you look into the bottomless black hole that we've created in cancel culture and things like that, where I've been a victim of that at times, and not that I didn't do anything wrong, because I was a stupid idiot, but when you feel that, like when you're looking into it and you're like, wow, God, there's not a lot of empathy out there.
No.
And don't get me wrong, like
there's a lot of people talking about empathy.
Yeah. Be kind, you know, when Caroline Flack, the poor lady took her own life, and there was a lot of that out there. But the reality is cancel culture got right back to work next week.
Baseline people, they're good. The online world is violent, narcissistic psychopaths.
And that's what I'm getting to is, I feel like that online mindset of the online psychopath, it's creeping in real life.
You wouldn't submit to that kind of brainwashing under any other circumstances. If I was like, I'm running this particular party, put on the VR headset and listen to me talk to you for 7 hours a day, you'd tell me to F off. But if it's entertaining or sexy or funny, we as monkeys just choose
I love the way you said that. We as monkeys, you've nailed it, yeah. And I that is part of I feel like the issue is, It is infecting us.
Yes.
The narcissism is coming through the phone
it's like backwash.
Yeah.
Backwash. It's coming back, and we read the comments and you think the most vocal lunatics, the lunatics of any village, go online and scream about the issue, and you think that's what everybody thinks about the issue. It isn't. Most of us don't even bother. I don't leave a comment. I scroll past if it's weird. But the lunatics, they hold the space. I
mean, let's take, for example, in pop culture right now, Sam Smith is someone who everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
But it's the faux outrage about him that I'm more looking at, and those are the personalities who command the space. Like, do they really wake up in the morning and get really that outraged by some geezer? Like, you know, no offense to Sam Smith, who's out of shape and dressing up like a devil or a fucking balloon animal. You know, I get it. The guy looks like a bit ridiculous, but you're not really that angry. You're getting so angry because that will get the clickbait, the thumbnail, the title, and that will get you the reward.
The people who do this, I always think, like, a large majority of them have to be unemployed. They have to be.
Well, Piers Morgan is a guy who does that, though.
That's his employment, is to do that.
Yeah.
Like, his employment is to be, I'm absolutely outraged.
He doesn't, I mean, does he really give that much of a fuck about Meghan and Harry?
No.
Like, it's become his thing.
No, he doesn't.
That's how he makes money.
There's just no way, because I don't particularly like him, but I have to acknowledge, like, he must have a fairly full life. He must have he's as famous as he wants to be in exactly the way that he wants to be. Yeah. That's a fulfilled human. So no, he's not looking at Meghan and Harry and be like, my God, I couldn't sleep a wink until these two divorced.
For a guy who looks like that, right? Like, no offense to Piers, but again, he's not Mr. Chad athlete, you know, he's not a good-looking human necessarily, but he is a fat old guy who shags a woman who's probably well out of his league. He goes home driving a lovely car. You don't really give that much of a fuck.
No, he doesn't.
You walk in, you put your hat on.
Yes.
I am the middle-aged, or whatever he is, outraged white guy in Britain who is put there to be a voice of the voiceless, you know?
Yeah.
And for those white men who now feel like they're marginalized, I am going to be that guy.
Yes, fuck you, white men. evil colonizers. We could say it. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, I mean, really, yeah, it's okay to say it for me.
And it's interesting that Piers and Andrew Tate, they did the interview together. And I thought that was a good interview. I
didn't say it, actually, because I thought I really dislike both of you. So
okay.
I'm just hoping a bomb hits. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that.
Yeah, you'll be cancelled.
Not again. You can't cancel me for the same thing twice, though. That's true.
That's true. And if you're independently wealthy, try and cancel me, I guess. They in their combat, they brought out other sides of each other, which was interesting. But I think that they both play a game that, like, people will say, it's okay, it's just for likes, it's for follows, it's entertainment. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't troll each other. We shouldn't outrage each other. This is infantile, what we're doing.
Exactly, mate. And that's why, like, a mate of mine sent me a video some guy had made about me the other day. And God bless him, he's a younger YouTuber. He's like, are you all right? I was like, mate, there's about 100 of these out there at least. I'm like,
no, I'm not. Come round and give me a cuddle.
I'm like, I'm not even going to watch this. I'm like, this guy spent half an hour making a video, but I don't give a fuck. Because again, if I responded to every one of these clowns, I'd never get anything done. I wouldn't be happy. I'd be listening to people rip me to shreds and say everything they hate about me. It isn't conducive, but again, there is a reward system there, and that is the reason that these people are doing that. Going back to the relationship side of it, because I do find this fascinating, and I think a lot of people have been there. But if you're trying to work out, you know, is my partner a narcissist, or am I a narcissist?
There's actually a test for narcissism. I think came out in 2018. I can't remember the American university, but the test was basically to say to people, students on campus, these are the traits of a narcissist. Do you agree that you have these traits or not? And they would either say yes or no. And when they compared it to like multifactorial, difficult clinical tests that take 40 minutes to complete, it was about as accurate. So if you say to somebody who's highly narcissistic, these are the traits of narcissism, do you agree that you have this? They'll largely just tell you, yes, I do. You can confront people with MPD, and as long as they don't think it's going to disadvantage them, they'll tell you, yes, the internal subjective experience of MPD, of narcissism, for people who have narcissistic personality disorder, is that this is not a disadvantage. I'm better than you.
What happens when two narcissists are together? Is that just chaos, or?
I suspect that the most stable and probably the most common relationship format is not narcissist and victim or narcissist and codependent. It is narcissist with narcissist. And probably different forms.
Power couples, for example.
Power couples. They last longer. With a narcissist and a codependent, the codependent's going to get tired. And they'll either, physically leave this world, or they'll start drinking, or something will break down. But with another narcissist of a different stripe, perhaps they're very psychopathic, histrionic, borderline, they could be covert with a grandiose. But as long as they both have that fundamental narcissistic core, they can still get narcissistic supply, and they can just live together for decades on end and have a dramatic and confrontational relationship, but largely it will balance itself out. So it's actually the more normal, I suspect, is most narcissistic relationships are actually with a narcissist and a narcissist. We think as codependents, it must all be a narcissist finding a victim. I know multiple narcissistically abusive relationships where people are married and they just take it in turns to drink each other's milkshake, basically. They just abuse each other by turn.
Wow.
It's sick. It's really sick. Really sick. The way that you would know if you're in a narcissistically abusive relationship is if you start questioning if you're in a narcissistically abusive relationship. If you start looking at YouTube videos and Googling, why has my girlfriend got no empathy? Why is my boyfriend so cruel to me?
A friend of mine once sort of confided in me about such a situation that they were in, of where nothing they said was being taken on board. Yeah. And for a man as well to be in a physically abusive relationship was a real shock to me. So he was the victim of physical abuse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was one of those situations where it was one of the rare times in my life where people have confided in me on that level and made me go, wow. And as a friend, you're like, well, what do I do? I'm worried about, worried. about the health and safety of this guy.
It was that serious.
Yeah. But well, for me it was because I was on the outside.
Yep.
And I'm like, when I'm hearing certain things are happening, and I'm like, okay, you came home to what? Like this happened or that? You know, I'm like, where's this going? Because if you've got a friend who's in that situation, who's, you know, you're like, well, if you haven't got the strength to, and then I'm also worried, what happens if one day this guy, he snaps?
Yeah.
Because when a man is in a situation where he's being physically beaten and
provoked.
It's like, you know, like, have you ever seen Me, Myself and Irene, where one day it all just short circuits, and
it's really good,
and
actually.
He drives a fucking car into a fucking building because he's had enough of the life shit because he's Mr. Nice Guy.
Yes.
That's what I was worried about. I'm like, what happens if one day you turn around and belt her and the whole world's going to think you're a fucking this, that and the other, when in reality, you know, this has been going on, and it's been, you know, it's a really tricky situation to be in where, you know, there's no empathy.
Yes, I think the key there, well, look, like anybody can have a bad day, a bad month. Some people even have bad years, you know, if they're grieving for like a mother or father, they're addicted to drugs. There's things that can happen in relationships where your partner can go a little dark for a while. And I think we have to account for that. Where there's a consistent pattern of behavior across time and across contexts, we really have to start letting go of the idea that this person is good for you. You have to despair. You have to give up.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't like giving up.
And because we make exceptions for them, because and excuses, you go, oh, they're going through a bad time at the moment. Their you know, dog just died, or their dad died, or whatever. You know, there's reasons for them not being in their best. But there was one relationship I was in where that person was constantly complaining about one thing or another, and there was always something. There was always a thing. You know what I mean? And
there is something called, I smile because there's something called negativistic personality disorder. Constantly complaining.
Yeah, and I could guarantee on any given day, if I asked the question, "Are you okay? Are you know, what's happened today?"
You wouldn't believe.
It would be the. And I'd literally hate that sound. I'd get to a point where, you know, so...
They just want to suck all the joy out of life and out of you and everyone else,
Bro, and, you know, if there's one bit of advice I could say to any man out there is, first and foremost, think of get yourself a positive person. You know, because positivity, you know, can take you to a happy life, you know, no matter what. And being in that scenario was brutal. Just feeling like constant negativity, but it just felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't turn that situation. I couldn't do anything. And like you say, stop making exceptions. Accept that this is who you're with. And I found that really difficult, you know.
The reason, I'm sorry to bang this drum, it's a cultural issue. Again, we now live in a culture, it's extremely consumerist and it's very morally relativistic. We've embraced postmodernism wholesale. And nobody realizes it. They're like, postmodern, that's some weird thing from university. It's in everything. It's in everything. It's the water we drink every day. Postmodernism, moral relativity, there's an awful lot of ideas that we have around that sort of social constructionist. And what all this means is that psychology and psychological ideas fundamentally seeped out into reality. So there's things that I should say to you in therapy that are correct in therapy. You're my client and you say I did a bad thing. And I'm like, let's say for this space, I'm holding space for you, as the Americans say. There's nothing bad here. That's a judgment. And we'll leave the value judgment aside. You did something in response to a pressure that you were under. You know the drill. Have you been in therapy?
No.
Okay.
Well, I was a little bit, but yeah.
A little bit. But you know this talk. So I'm not here as your therapist to assist you in morally condemning yourself. We're never going to move forward therapeutically. We're not going to have the breakthroughs I need you to have so that you get better and move on with your life. I'm emotionally mature. So that space must be morally relativistic. You say I did a bad thing and I say it was bad to you in that context, but maybe over here in another context it wouldn't be. That's good in therapy. It's shit in banking. It doesn't belong in hospitals. It damn sure doesn't belong in the fucking military or education. We need moral absolutism. how are you going to have a people who don't know right from wrong? Of course, we're all susceptible to narcissistic abuse. There's no right or wrong. Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, yeah, but you don't know how his mum raised him. No, he's a bad dude. Why? Because killing people is wrong. So the moral relativist will say, yeah, but maybe in his culture it's okay. I don't give a fuck what your culture is.
Yeah.
You know, certain things should have a hard moral boundary. We don't kill. If we can't agree on that, we don't hit. If you tell me no, no means no. It doesn't matter what the no is. I ask you, you want to do something or give me something, you say no, no means no. That's respecting your boundaries as a human being. This is where we need to be, and we're swimming in a soup of moral relativity, and people think it's righteous. The cancel culture brigade, they think this is virtuous. No, everybody's everything. Whatever you believe that you do in your culture is fine. No, no, no. There are boundaries. Boundaries are good. Boundaries protect us. So we're also in an anti-boundary culture. So it's very hard for any of us to assess. I struggled with it for years. Dude, I had a brand of martial arts training that the air marshals took on. I spoke to the fucking air marshals in Las Vegas every month. Meanwhile, at home, a 24-year-old dancer was running rings around me. I'm teaching self-protection to American special forces and air marshals and police. And back home, I can't protect myself from being humiliated by this cult that I'm living with. Insane. Totally insane. But
when you say running rings, can you elaborate on how it made you feel? What happened?
She had histrionic personality disorder, probably, which meant that she was hypersexual. Also borderline, very, very emotionally
It's hard not to smile when you say that, brother.
What, hypersexual?
Yeah, you're talking about a 24-year-old dancer who's hypersexual.
Amazing.
I mean,
who'd have thunk?
but I can understand how, as a man, and how addictive that situation could have been of, like, obviously you're getting a reward there from everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
But then the other patterns of behaviour, probably chaotic, I would assume.
Totally chaotic and didn't create an environment of safety, you know, which is if you want to love someone, then you have to be vulnerable, you need to be safe.
And that is actually, in my experience, the best relationships are the ones where you feel that you're safest.
Yeah.
That's a real big word for me.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Her father left. She was Chinese. She moved to the UK when she was 4. The father left and went and produced another family back in Malaysia, where she was from. Massive daddy issues, huge daddy issues. Really loved attention from men. When I say she was a dancer in nightclubs, and she was she was on the British team for sports acrobatics.
Okay.
Bedroom activities were great. Everything else outside of the bedroom, she just wasn't qualified for.
Can we explore the daddy issues thing then? If it wasn't for women with daddy issues, I'd be a virgin. It's definitely been a gift and a curse in my life.
You're in that Viking daddy niche.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Well, you know, when women with daddy issues I assume anyway, they tend to like men who look like they can protect them and yada, yada, yada. So this has obviously been a factor in my life where I've encountered, the majority of women I've encountered have had daddy issues.
Okay, so there's little notes I've got in my head that I have to bring up. So let me preface this with something that I knew we would cover today. Everybody knows Sigmund Freud. Everybody thinks that Sigmund Freud was like a misogynistic, finger-wagging Viennese gentleman who loathed women and feared female sexuality. Not true. Nothing further from the truth. He was actually very sex positive. Sigmund Freud, I'm paraphrasing, said that after years and years of analysis of men and women, psychoanalysis, he said sexual perversion is so ubiquitous and so normal that we shouldn't call it sexual perversion at all. So perversion, what we now term perversion, is built into human sexuality. There's another guy who's in his lineage of psychoanalytic theory called Slavoj Žižek, who's a Slovenian philosopher who I like, who says it's never just two people in a room having sex. There's always a third element, the perversion, the fetish, the fantasy, whatever it is. That's how human beings achieve orgasm and have really good sex. So if you have anybody, just so people know, so we set the context, because daddy issues is a paraphilia. And some people are disgusted by it because they think the daddy role play is she's literally seeing you as her biological father. Now that's gross. And it's not that. It's a power dynamic that is played for safety.
Exactly why I said protect there.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, rather than dad, rather than actual father.
Which would be the opposite of protection. That would be a boundary infringement, and it would be exploitation.
Absolutely.
It's not protection.
Yeah.
So
the word daddy is sort of thrown in as a way of putting a name on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For women to give you that sort of title.
It's a status.
Yeah.
It's a status thing.
I get it.
And so there's a submission and a dominance there, but there's also a taboo. Well, humans like breaking taboos. And when it comes to sexuality, you'll notice that most of the things that get the engine running are taboo breaking. You read, there's a woman called Nancy Friday, or at least that's her pseudonym. She did multiple books on female sexual fantasies and male sexual fantasies. I recommend anybody scroll through, look at what people in the privacy of their homes, in the privacy of their own minds, look at what makes them have an orgasm. Show me the sexual fantasy that doesn't have a boundary break in it. Even if it's a guy who has a sexual fantasy about his secretary, well, where's the boundary break? He shouldn't be fucking his secretary. He shouldn't be fucking his secretary. There's something.
And there's a reason, I mean, let's be real, why the views on porn videos are in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, of course.
And porn videos seem to get more views than any YouTube video. Do you know what
I mean, the money in porn just grows every year. The statistics for OnlyFans alone, I mean, it's ridiculous.
And I spoke to an OnlyFans girl as a friend, just to be clear, at one point, and some of the things I found out about her customers and what they'd ask for, it was never normal. It was, you know, it was always a bit odd, a bit different.
Yeah, it's a paraphilia.
There was always something, as you've just said.
Yeah.
There was always a perversion. There was always a kink that got them off.
Well, and the reason why I'm prefacing it with this is we spoke about the online cancel culture and the moral outrage brigade and the people who clutch their pearls and are like, oh my God, you like daddy role play or whatever the thing is. So do you. You all like something. You're either asexual or you have a perversion.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here. No, I'm purely vanilla. You're not. So the psychologists have spoken. We know from all the data, we know from porn searches, we know from work by people like Nancy Friday, everybody has a third element. All of us, we need it. It's fine. It's totally fine. This should be seen as a third element. It's a desire for protection. It's about safety. Within the daddy role play model, safety is built in because don't take this literally, folks. It's psychoanalytic theory. It's all symbolic. A father cannot not undaughter his daughter. It's a bond. You can't, there's nothing you can do. Like a father, you can't terminate that relationship.
Absolutely.
It's an interminable relationship. A daughter can't abandon her father. A father can't abandon the daughter. Safety's built in. So people think, oh, the fantasy is all about hardcore porn and like athletic. Yeah, there's an element of that, but it's in a context of safety. That's why it's appealing. The male gets something from it, the female gets something from it. In gay relationships, it'll be the same thing. Somebody's a top, somebody's a bottom. There's dominance and submission, there's sadism and there's masochism. This is just yin and yang in human sexuality.
And as you say, it's the orgasm is really the end of it. Like there is a lot more going on, whether it be financial and all sorts of things going on.
I've been in two relationships where the daddy thing was proven to not just be sexual in the way that you're talking about, because the girls would forget. And we'd be in the supermarket and they'd call me daddy. And I'm like, there's people here.
Yeah.
One girl did it in front of her mum. And I was like, oh, great. Thank you very much for that.
Don't you be getting any ideas, mum?
Yeah.
I totally get it. And like for me personally, it was never the thing. It was always something that I sort of accepted because I was like, all right, I get this. And you know, you're in a relationship. You always want to meet each other halfway, whatever that is. Why do you think that women do have these daddy issues and then choose to try and create a new situation with a man under that same title?
I think what I'm noticing, and I actually haven't looked at the research for this, but we'll probably back it, is the daddy fantasy is actually more prevalent now than it was like 20 years ago. And I think it's because there's a lack of father figures, there's a lack of men. That is the ultimate man. That is the man. That's the first man in your life. That is the ultimate male authority.
And is it because also maybe that men are becoming so feminized
100%.
that women are craving that figure?
So say if I go online it's always going to wind people if I'm biologically essentialist. And I'm like, men like this and women like that, and it upsets people. And women will get more vocally upset typically than men will. They hate it. They're like, I didn't know you were a secret misogynist. I didn't know that you were this phobic and that phobic and blah, blah, blah. And all these words get thrown around, but my DMs fill up. So you're outraged and you're aroused. This is human nature. This is what we are. We are hypocritical creatures. We're contrary creatures. You're like, I hate that. Oh, I've never been more aroused. That's disgusting. Oh, let's go and have sex. That's the dynamism that we require.
And women who find those arrogant men, who love themselves. They find them annoying, but also...
Oh, so annoying.
Yeah. There's also that attraction there of... I don't know why, but women do like men who are very overly confident, for example,
It's again, we're back to... Let me preface this just really quickly so I don't lose people. The solution to all of this, like what I'm about to say, we've spoken about the savagery that's inside of men and women, is humility and a sense of humor. Like, I have to accept that the girl I love, that I live with, she's biologically programmed like this and this and this. She needs to accept the creature that I am. I accept the creature that she is. If I hate women, or a core of me hates an element of women, we have no chance. If she hates men, or an element of her hates some aspect of men, I'm a man. We've got no chance. I have to forgive her. She has to forgive me. In humility, we meet in the middle with a sense of humor, and we find a way to compromise our way around it. The instinct here, I think, between men and women is it's intrinsically different. I've said this to my female friends. It drives them crazy, but they always thank me for it afterwards. Women like, not all women, many women like men who seem to be arrogant and narcissistic and psychopathic because it is seen as intrinsically masculine. The essence of masculinity in the yin-yang framework is yang.
They are the guys who survive. They are the providers.
They're the providers.
Hunter-gatherers types.
And they're not nice. They're not submissive. They're not.
You know
they
why?
Don't compromise.
Yeah, because back in the days when it was important to kill and to fucking hunt and all of that, you didn't want to be nice for that
No,
shit. Exactly.
These are dudes who are good at smashing the enemy's head in and then falling asleep and sleeping like a baby.
Soldiers and prostitutes.
Exactly. We're back to barbarism. Soldiers and prostitutes. So women will get frustrated with themselves and be like, I always go for these bad boys. I had another female friend of mine. She's she won't mind me saying this. She's from Serbia, and she's like, I fell in love with a guy, and I'm so ashamed. It's so embarrassing. And I was like, show me his pictures. I can't. I'm such a tit. And she showed me this guy who looks like the sort of the amusing stereotype of a Balkan gangster. He's got the chains, he's got a white BMW, he's got wraparound sunglasses. I'm like, are you kidding me? Look at you. I promised her I wouldn't laugh, and then I laughed at her for about 5 minutes. She's like, I know, I can't help it. I don't know what it is in me. And we talked about it, and I said, no, because you should see the things that excite me about women. It's embarrassing. It's childish. Like when a woman shows herself off, or she's very sexually confident, or she flirts with other men, or she's showing off her body. I'm like, am I a moron? I teach psychology for a living. Am I stupid? And a part of me goes, yeah, you're dumb. You're a dumb human.
You're a monkey, essentially.
You're a monkey.
Yeah.
Okay, to be vulgar but without using swear words, like what is making the blood rush to the parts of my body that need blood? It's not an intellectual stimulation, Like
that's why TikTok has become a thing, is because short clips of girls bouncing their asses around get men keep them swiping all the time.
That's that dumb monkey brain going. And it's not, we might all want utopianism and to pretty it up and to idealize it, but what caused human beings to be here? A lot of thrusting and gasping and like moaning and calling each other daddy and role playing and switching it up. And that's why we're here. You might not like it, but it was an awful lot of heterosexual activity and people coming in each other that led to us being here.
So going back to the daddy thing, have you ever found that it could backfire though? Because obviously you're trying to be there in a role that's, despite the jokiness and the playfulness of this whole kink that some girls have, they do speak to you in a different kind of way once they see you as that person. I found anyway, is like there's a little bit more of a respectful tone. They treat you a little bit more as a senior figure in the relationship, you know. It's funny. I'm
just to help me stand up. Thank you, young lady.
Cheers, darling. But sometimes that can trigger, I don't know, maybe the trauma of their dad leaving them, abandonment issues. And I've had moments where girls have been like, weirdly emotional out of the blue, and I've been like, "You're not angry at me, are you? You're angry at your dad," and like the immediately like crying, and you know, you give a hug. But have you found that that's happened to you a little bit, or
yes,
maybe not quite as obvious as that? But
well, I mean, what you're describing, I wouldn't say is particularly unhealthy. There's a moment of shadow activation. That's a sign of vulnerability. You were getting closer in terms of intimacy. Like, I guess I should say it, like sometimes acts of abuse that they're taken in a single moment, snapshot, that's abuse. Actually, that can be because the relationship is progressing. She's spoken to you in a way that was very rude or very disrespectful, or you said something to her. That's actually because you're progressing and you're showing each other that shadow side, this avowed side of yourself. I went into counselling for what you're talking about. And my counsellor back in 2010, when I told her about this role play thing and the safety of the role play, she said, yeah, but also this girl can do anything to you and she feels like you won't abandon her. That's a problem. She feels like she can abuse you, she can flirt with other men, she can disrespect your boundaries, and because you're her daddy...
Unconditional love,
unconditional
which
love.
Isn't a relationship. That's not the role that you're really in.
Nope.
Yeah.
So, which is, without getting sidetracked again, like that's an interesting thing. That we think adults should have unconditional love for each other. And I'm like... I think relationships probably need to be more conditional, not less. You can love a person, you can love them even if you're not in a relationship with them, but be careful with saying we should be in a situation of unconditional love as two adults. Also, it's not true. Your love is actually, your togetherness is actually very conditional.
Why do you want it to be unconditional is my question. It's my worry.
It's a fucking good question.
If someone says that, I'm like, well, why though?
Yeah.
If you're never going to hurt me, and you know you're never going to hurt me, you don't have to worry about that.
Yep.
If you need it to be unconditional, it's because you're planning on some wild shit, and I'm not down for that.
That's good. That's good. That shows me that you've really been hurt many times.
Brother.
Because you're ready. You're like that. Hey, hey.
I've got my shield and my kilt on, man.
I see where this is going. Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a realistic expectation. That's not a realistic expectation. But yes, I ended up in counselling, and I remember the counsellor saying to me, part of the reason why your girlfriend is doing this to you is because you've allowed a role play that should have stayed in the bedroom to burst out the bedroom into real life, and now you are her father, so you can never leave. The horrible thing about that was I really struggled to leave her, even after she eventually cheated on me. She eventually consummated she was flirting with other men, and then eventually she got with another guy. And why couldn't I leave her? Was it because I loved her so much? No, it's because I was her father. She was younger than me.
And that's probably why she felt like she could cheat on you. Because almost she's not really cheating on her guy.
Her boyfriend.
Yeah, you're above that almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we did 9 months of horror. It was horror. Obviously, once the trust is broken, it's just a disgusting mess.
It's brutal.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But what kept me in it? Was it lost a little bit? Was it that I loved her? No, because that was broken. I felt guilty. Every time I tried to get rid of her, I'd have these protracted, long, psychotic fantasies where her life would fall apart without me, in a way a father would, having anxiety about his child. So, yeah, we got to be careful with this stuff. Really careful.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a great point about keeping that sort of dynamic confined to the bedroom.
Yeah. Because, and the bedroom will be fantasy, and healthy relationships are rooted in fantasy. You have a shared fantasy with your partner of who you are. It's totally fine. Navigating the specific boundaries of the fantasy is the real skill, I think. Yeah,
that's a great point, because it's supposed to be playful, and it's supposed to not get too serious, to not become, and it sounds like that just came out of the bedroom and just took over the whole thing.
Yes, it did. It really did. And it was, I didn't realize how much of that was being powered by her and how much of it was powered by sex. I was 30 years old. This was the hottest girl I'd ever been with by far. She wanted sex all the time. And she was deep into this daddy thing. And I was like, this is like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
In the beginning. 12 months later, I was a shell of myself.
Bro,
Yeah.
I've been in a situation like this before where sex controlled me.
Yeah.
You know, I met a girl who I thought I had the best, sexual experience with, and I couldn't get enough of that. And what I found, and I think that the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think a lot of men do this, is that reward system. At the start, it is that hit of, wow, this is unbelievable, more. And the more little red flags were popping up, I was ignoring them consistently because I was like, I can't get enough.
Because you're an addict.
Yeah,
Point.
I was like a crackhead, mate. And it didn't matter how damaging this situation was.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one point where an eye-opening experience of her screaming and shouting like a lunatic at me, and I was like, "What? How did we get here?" You know what I mean? And it's because as men, you are willing sometimes to overlook so many things when you are with that hottest girl of your life type shit.
Yes, I think, so we're back to that biological determinism, biological essentialism thing. Men are very, very motivated by sexual fulfillment. But just to add a little nuance to that, I don't know if you found this to be true. I think actually men are also, within that paradigm, intrinsically emotional. The best orgasms I ever had were with girls I really loved. And I was like, hang on, but if I'm just this psychopathic warrior sex machine, what does that mean? Because it should be really great as long as she's hot, as long as she's hot, as long as she's hot. And it actually hasn't proven to be true for me. And the reason I bring that up is that's what keeps you stuck in that relationship. First level, sex. But second level, why is the sex so good? Because you're in love. And that seems to turn on a different system that allows the sexual experience to be better, maybe you feel safer. In my I don't know if you found that to be true, but like the sex was just way better.
Also, you're not afraid to share more, to be more you, to push those boundaries, as I say, explore every kink that you want.
Which I did with that girl.
And yeah, fair fuck.
We were just
love
pigs.
it.
We were so fucking greedy. It was disgusting. We were pigs.
I love it. And I think that the thing with women, though, is I think that, and the thing that I've understood a little bit more lately about women is that they don't understand. I understand that they're nowhere motivated by sex, but I don't think they realize what a need it is for a man. Almost, and I get that it varies from man to man, but because women don't have that same need, their needs are different. They can I kind of feel like they dismiss it a little bit in their head of how important sex is to a man. And going back to some of my experiences, when a woman said no in a relationship to sex, for me, that was a moment of like, oh, I really am hurt.
Yeah.
Like hurt emotionally, not just physically, I'm not getting what I want, but it was I feel so fucking rejected right now. Like, if you don't want me sexually, and I get that it's not the language women speak in the way that men.
She may have been in love with you. She may have been like, no, I want you emotionally.
Yeah, and I'm not even, I'm not even criticizing that.
Yeah.
It was one of those, we'd had an argument. She wasn't in the mood. I'm like, let's make up.
Oh, okay.
Classic
like,
man.
No.
But it wounded us because I was just like, I already feel like shit about the argument we had. I'm trying to make up over here, and now I feel rejected on a sexual level.
Yes.
And I just don't think that women quite understand that, as you've just rightly said, when you combine sex with that emotional connection, how important it is for a man, and how much we need that positive reinforcement on a regular occurrence.
One of the few things that I see as being good about the development of the technology that's inevitably going to lead to us being in the metaverse and virtual reality and pods, that's our future as human beings, sadly, unless there's a revolution or a major war, is the ability potentially to create empathy. So I will know one day, possibly in my lifetime, if the technology is there, really what it feels like to be a woman. And a woman will really know what it feels like to be me. And I imagine if we did that a few times and you come out the pod I think it would change the way we treat each other.
Obviously, we don't have that now, but what we do have is communication.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the problems right now in relationships, that of people I know, is because people are starting a relationship off, and this is me included in the past for sure, of protecting yourself. You're kind of coming in with you're not giving everything, and you're kind of waiting to see whether or not this person is the one to give everything to.
Yeah.
But you're kind of fucked, because if you don't go for it at some point, you end up 10 years down the road in a relationship where you've never really given everything. You've never really opened up, because you're waiting for that moment where, and yeah, you've committed along the way, but you've never fully let it all out. And I think for me, that's been one of the things that's benefited my life in the last few years, is just realizing to just be real and just to be you.
You should, at least to be you, to be vulnerable. At least if you're being rejected, it's you that's being rejected, and you can courageously endure that and have humility and a sense of humor and go, well, that fucking sucked.
Bro, it's brutal.
It's brutal.
When you're really you and you feel like they don't, it's not necessarily like I felt rejected when I had that moment of kind of rejection. It was more like, you don't love me enough. That's a more of a complicated feeling, where you're like, yeah, you love me, but your ceiling of love ain't my ceiling of love. I'm a bit of a fucking, even I wouldn't say I'm a classic romantic, but I'm a hard lover. Like, that sounds so fucking...
Ooh, daddy.
Ooh. You know what I mean?
There's a clip.
There you go,
I'm
bro.
a hard lover.
That's going on TikTok.
I tell you what.
When I love hard, I love hard, okay? As in, like, I give it all my all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when it doesn't come back in that level, you're like, I've got to let you go. And as much as I like you and I love you and all of that, you're never going to be that person who's going to give me back what I'm giving out.
It's interesting you say that, because I think the old self-defense business was called Street Fight Secrets, and it was for lads at the front edge who needed to fight with their bare hands, and you're headbutting each other and eye gouging each other, all that. They would often be the most romantic men. Their fantasy, not sexually but emotionally, about women frightened me. When I would talk to them and I'd interact with them, and they'd tell me about the problems they had with their wives, and the special forces guys who'll fucking shoot 10 lads in the head and then go and have breakfast. Terrified of approaching a girl in a bar, or terrified of having an argument with their wife. So when I see guys who are more at the masculine, who present more masculine, who do their powerlifting, their bodybuilding and all that, I always wonder, like, is this like one of my clients from back in the day, where there is this, and I think I'm not big on genetics describing personality things, but I have this suspicion that there's like a warrior gene and a soldier gene, and it's kind of dangerous on one level to the enemy, but dangerous to itself within camp, because I'm loyal. I'll do my duty. I won't leave. Even when I should leave, because I don't give up. I want to stick with this. And there's this ethos that makes you very, very attractive to dangerous women, and also very, very unlikely to leave when you should. I'm not leaving. I don't quit. I'm tough. I can take this. She has a few problems, but I'm a tough guy. And then 5 years later, the light's slowly dimming from your eyes and you're exhausted.
Bro. And yeah, if there's two qualities of mine that I feel like I've let be abused in the past, it's loyalty and generosity.
Right. It's a very masculine trait.
Yeah, and I feel like they are two of my best and worst qualities, because again, it's like women and friends, you can be too loyal to a point where you're a mug, and I've definitely felt that way, and it's just important to not be too nice. And I think there'll be a lot of young lads listening to this, and because we view those qualities as such great things, but they're not always. You know what I mean? Like,
nothing should be boundaryless in this world. Nothing. There's nothing you should give in a boundaryless way. It loses all value. If your loyalty spunks out everywhere at the first opportunity, what is it? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Same with your generosity. Like, even if you have the money to buy people dinner all the time, it took me years. I was 40 before I learned this. Don't. Yes, you've got the money. Yes, you're richer than they are. But you can't live like this. It's not right, and it corrupts them. I'm corrupting my relationship with people I really care about.
Fucking so true. Because you turn a dynamic of friendship into provider, receiver.
And no good deed goes unpunished. You're creating resentment, and you'll feel it.
Oh, mate, I didn't even realise until it was too late.
Yep.
I swear to God, in many, many instances, I thought, give more, people will like me more. So wrong. Like it's crazy, but people they do resent you, or they begin to look at you like with entitlement.
Oh yeah, I've got the.
They don't appreciate anything.
I've got the knife marks in my back to prove it, mate. I've done it.
It's so weird.
And it's got to the point now where I have friendships at the moment with lads who are younger than me who are struggling financially, and I know how I used to handle this years ago, and I know what I would have done. And I'm like, because I want to keep this guy as a friend in my life, who do I set a boundary with? Not with him. He's not coming to me and going, you've got money, give it to me. I'm setting a boundary with me. I'm like this. I'm trying to, the hand's reaching for the wallet. I'm like, don't fucking do it. That's weakness. That's cowardice. He has to learn like you learned. He has to grow like you grew. What do you want him to be, an infant? Let him fucking learn. Let him grow. Let him suffer.
And it kind of makes me feel sorry for some of the most successful people out there that I know, of like, you guys don't even know who your fucking real friends are.
No.
And you never will, unfortunately, because you've gone beyond the point of ever, like with me, I've had great moments of huge falls from grace where I've had to like really look around and go, who are my true friends? And unfortunately, a lot of the time, they're not who you thought they were.
Right.
But it's a blessing as well, because you find out the people who you didn't necessarily look at as the closest, they show up out of nowhere and they're like, I'm your guy, actually.
Yeah.
And it can be a really, a gift and a curse again. But the guys who I know who have gone to that mega success part of YouTube, they'll never have those big falls where they lose their money or they become a dirty word and they have to look around and see who their true friend. It'll never happen because they're just beyond, they're bulletproof.
Right.
And you'll live a whole life never really finding that out.
That sounds like hell on earth. I would hate that. Yeah. I'd hate to be living...
Backslappers left, right and centre, mate.
So you live in a simulation. I used to do a Russian martial art called Systema, and they wouldn't use mats when you trained. They would let you fall on the concrete, and they would say, a mat, what do they say? The mat is your bad friend because it protects you when you fall. The floor is a good friend because it hurts and shows you where you need to break fall better. And I was like, shit. That's what I need. I need hard feedback from the environment, from my friends, to feel alive and switched on. Being told I'm amazing, it gives me this weird, like I'm sinking into a matrix simulation thing.
And out of those friendship groups in my life, it's the lads who were like the real ones who gave you that hard advice. They're the ones who are thereafter.
Yeah.
The ones who aren't sucking up to you, the ones who are just treat you like anyone.
They'll be weird. They'll be eccentric. They'll be pricks sometimes. They will. They're difficult dudes or girls. But yes, they're thereafter. They didn't give a fuck before, so they don't give a fuck afterwards.
Absolutely.
So they have to be outside of the simulation. The bubble.
Matt, so true. This has been a fantastic chat, mate. I really loved it.
Really enjoyed it, mate.
Honestly,
really enjoyed
you're
it.
a good dude. And I hope people got something from it. I've tried to be as kind.
If they didn't, we did.
We definitely did, lad. Shout out all the daddies out there. Love yous. And the daddy lovers. Respect. Thanks for keeping us in action. Do check out Richard's content. It is fantastic. You've got a YouTube channel, Instagram, all of that. I'll put the links in the description below. I would love to do a part 2, mate.
Lovely. Yeah, let's do it.
And enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.